Mom screamed, "Get out and never come back." And I actually listened, but weeks later, they were the ones banging on my door, begging for help. Stay with me for a moment while I open up this chapter of my life, and if it hits your heart even a little, show some love by supporting the channel. Evan Raleigh had never been the favorite child, not even close. At 22, he worked long days as an apprentice mechanic in a small Missouri town, saving every dollar he could. He was quiet, steady, and respectful, the kind of kid who never caused trouble. But none of that ever mattered to his mother, Marla, or his stepfather, Victor. Ever since Victor came into their lives, Evan had become the invisible one. Everything revolved around Tyler, Victor's son, the golden boy who could do no wrong even when he obviously did. Evan had lived with that imbalance for years, teaching himself to stay silent and swallow the unfairness. But nothing prepared him for the night everything fell apart. Tyler had taken Victor's car without permission, pushed it too hard, and nearly wrecked it. When Victor demanded an explanation, Tyler pointed the finger at Evan. He claimed Evan had been the one driving it earlier and must have caused the damage. Evan tried to defend himself, tried to remind them he had warned Tyler about the car's failing brakes. But Marla didn't want to hear a single word. In one moment, her disappointment turned into cold rage. She shouted that Evan had become a burden, that she was tired of his stories, and that he needed to leave her house immediately. Victor stood behind her, arms crossed, satisfied. Tyler watched with fake innocence, hiding the smirk Evan knew so well. Evan grabbed his small bag and walked out without arguing. He had learned long ago that arguments were useless in that house. With nowhere else to go, Evan dragged his few belongings to the auto shop where he worked. The storage room above the shop was barely livable, dusty floors, a broken heater, and a mattress that felt like it was stuffed with rocks. But at least it was quiet, and no one was yelling at him. He told himself it was temporary, that he would figure something out. But when he lay down that night, the betrayal hit him harder than any physical blow could. His own mother had thrown him out over a lie, without even giving him a chance to explain. In the following days, Evan forced himself to focus on work. He swept floors, repaired engines, and tried to keep his mind off the pain. Hank, the shop owner, noticed Evan's exhaustion but didn't pry. It was the closest thing to kindness Evan had felt in a long time. But deep down, he knew one thing for sure. His family had chosen Tyler's lie over his truth, and that wound wasn't going to heal easily. He didn't know it yet, but their betrayal was only the beginning, because soon they would be the ones needing him more than ever. Evan woke up the first morning in his tiny room above the auto shop with a stiff back and a heavy chest. The thin light leaking through the cracked window didn't make the place feel any warmer, but at least no one was yelling at him to get out. He washed his face in the small metal sink, pulled on his work clothes, and headed downstairs before the sun was fully up. Working early felt easier than lying in bed thinking about how easily his family had thrown him away. Hank Mercer, the shop owner, barely looked up when Evan walked in. Hank wasn't the type to ask questions or offer sympathy. He just grunted something that sounded like "morning" and tossed Evan a set of keys for the day's repairs. It was rough, but it was steady, and it felt safer than home ever had. Slowly, Evan started taking every extra shift he could. He stayed late, cleaned the shop, restocked supplies, anything to keep himself too busy to think. Hank didn't say it directly, but Evan could tell the man appreciated the effort. Sometimes Hank left extra food in the break room, pretending he ordered too much. Evan knew better, but he didn't say anything. Small gestures meant more to him than big speeches ever did. Across the lot, the little diner next door was always buzzing around lunchtime. Evan usually grabbed food there because it was cheap and close. One afternoon, a girl with a warm smile and messy ponytail handed him his order. "You look like you haven't eaten in days," she joked, placing an extra biscuit on his plate without charging him for it. Her name was Callie Dorset, new in town and working double shifts to save money. She didn't know anything about Evan's past, but she treated him like he mattered, and that alone made him return more often. Every day, the exhaustion built up, not just physical, but emotional. He'd lie awake at night replaying the moment his mother screamed at him to leave. Her voice stuck in his head like a splinter he couldn't pull out. He wanted to stop feeling that sharp mix of anger and sadness, but it followed him everywhere. Callie asked once if he was okay. Evan shrugged it off. He didn't want pity. He just wanted peace. One evening, after finishing a long shift, Evan sat on the edge of his mattress and stared at the small space he now called home. It wasn't much, but it was his. No lies. No yelling. No choosing someone else over him. For the first time in a long while, he felt a strange kind of freedom, even if it came wrapped in loneliness. He made a silent promise to himself that night. He wouldn't go back. He wouldn't let his family pull him into their chaos again. They had made their choice. Now he was making his. He would build his life alone, one long day at a time, and leave the past exactly where it belonged behind him. The sky had already turned dark when Evan finally locked up the auto shop for the night. He was tired, the kind of tired that made his bones feel heavy. He just wanted to climb upstairs, shower off the grease, and fall into bed. But as he turned to leave, he noticed someone standing near the shadowed edge of the parking lot. For a second, he thought it was just a customer who'd gotten the hours wrong, until the figure stepped forward and Evan froze. It was Tyler. His stepbrother looked nothing like the confident, smug kid Evan remembered. Tyler's clothes were wrinkled, his hair messy, and he kept glancing over his shoulder like someone was following him. "Evan, man, I need to talk to you," he said, voice shaky. Evan's stomach tightened with anger. "You shouldn't be here," he said sharply. "Go home." Tyler moved closer, hands trembling. "I didn't mean for everything to get so out of hand." Evan laughed once, cold and bitter. "You mean getting me kicked out? Lying to Mom and Victor? Yeah, that kind of thing tends to spiral." He started walking away, refusing to let Tyler drag him back into the chaos he'd finally escaped. But Tyler followed him. "It's not just about the car," he whispered, voice cracking. "Things are bad. Worse than you know." Evan stopped but didn't turn around. "Whatever mess you're in, it's yours. I'm done being the scapegoat." Tyler's breathing grew uneven. "Evan, please. I messed up. Dad messed up. Enough." Evan's voice was firm. "Leave." Tyler swallowed hard, nodded once, and backed away. He didn't even try to defend himself. He just looked scared. Truly scared. And for a moment, Evan felt something twist inside him. But he pushed it down and walked upstairs without another word. Later that night, after Evan had showered and changed into clean clothes, Hank knocked on his door. He stood there with a tired look, arms crossed like he was debating whether to speak. "You okay? Saw someone hanging around earlier." "Just Tyler," Evan said. He left. Hank sighed heavily, rubbing the back of his neck. Figured trouble wasn't far behind him, or behind Victor. Evan frowned. "What do you mean?" Hank leaned against the doorframe. "You know Victor's got a gambling problem, right? Well, it ain't small anymore. Word around town is he's in deep with Ronan Hale." Evan stiffened. Everyone in the county knew Ronan Hale, a local bookie with a reputation for ruining people's lives. If Victor owed him money, that wasn't just trouble. That was danger. Hank lowered his voice. "Ronan doesn't let people walk away. If Victor's desperate, he might do stupid things. Or drag people down with him." Evan sat on the edge of his bed, processing everything. Tyler's shaking hands. His mother's sudden voicemail. Victor's coldness. It all started forming a picture he didn't want to see. Maybe his family hadn't kicked him out just to protect Tyler. Maybe they were hiding something far darker. And for the first time since leaving home, Evan felt fear creep back into his chest. Evan's phone buzzed while he was wiping down the counters in the shop's break room. He glanced at the screen and felt his jaw tighten when he saw his mother's name. He hadn't heard from Marla since the night she screamed at him to get out. For a moment he considered ignoring it entirely, but curiosity forced him to press play. Her voice came through broken, shaking. "Evan, honey, please call me back. Please. I need you. Things are bad. I'm so sorry. Just please call me." It didn't even sound like her. Marla never apologized, never begged, never sounded small. But Evan didn't trust it. He felt his chest harden with old memories. Her choosing Victor's version of events. Her looking past Evan like he wasn't her son. Manipulation. That's what it had always been. A tug on his emotions to keep him obedient. He deleted the voicemail with a single tap. A few minutes later, Evan walked next door to the diner for coffee. Callie was wiping tables, humming softly under her breath. She looked up when she saw him and smiled. "You look like someone stole your toolbox." He tried to shrug it off, but she caught the tension in his eyes. "My mom called," he said, begging me to call back. Callie paused, leaning against the counter. "And what did you do?" "Deleted it." His voice came out sharper than he intended. Callie didn't judge him, but her expression softened. "Do you think maybe you should hear her out? Just in case." Evan shook his head. "She only reaches out when she wants something. It's always been that way." Callie wiped her hands on her apron and said gently, "Maybe." But sometimes people reach out because they're scared. At least listen to the next one. You don't have to answer. Just don't shut yourself out from something important. Her words stuck with him as he headed back to the shop. When he returned upstairs later, he saw another voicemail notification. His thumb hovered over delete. Then, thinking of Callie's quiet insistence, he hit play. Victor's voice exploded from the speaker, frantic and strained. Evan, listen to me. Ronan's coming after us, me, your mom, Tyler, everyone. Tyler did something stupid trying to fix my debt, and now Ronan's threatening to collect in ways you don't want to imagine. He thinks you might help. We need you to. The message cut off abruptly, like Victor had dropped the phone or someone had yanked it away. Evan stood frozen, the phone buzzing again in his hand as more missed calls appeared. His heartbeat hammered in his ears. So this was what Tyler meant. So this was the storm brewing behind the scenes. Part of him wanted to shut the world out again and protect the fragile stability he'd built. The other part, the part that still remembered being a boy waiting for his mother to choose him, felt a pull he hated. He didn't owe them anything. But danger didn't care about fairness. And Evan could feel it closing in. Evan was closing up the shop late again, trying to drown his thoughts in the familiar smell of motor oil and metal, when he heard hurried footsteps behind him. Before he could turn, someone grabbed his arm. He spun around, ready to swing, but stopped when he saw Tyler, pale, sweating, and breathing like he'd sprinted across town. Evan, please, Tyler gasped. Don't walk away. I need to tell you the truth. All of it. Evan yanked his arm free. I already heard enough. Victor's voicemail told me everything I needed to know. Tyler shook his head violently. No, you don't know why you got kicked out. You don't know what Dad did. You don't know what I did. Evan crossed his arms, jaw tight. Then talk. Because after tonight, I'm done. Tyler swallowed hard, eyes glossy. Okay. It started with Dad's insurance scam. He crashed the car on purpose. One of his stupid get-rich-quick plans. But the company started digging. He panicked. He needed a scapegoat. Evan blinked. A scapegoat? Tyler nodded miserably. Me and Dad were supposed to blame the accident on you. Say you'd taken the car without permission. That you'd messed it up. Dad said the investigators would believe it because you're the ungrateful, unstable one. His words, not mine. Evan felt something cold crawl up his spine. So the fight that night, the screaming, all of that was planned. Tyler's voice cracked. Dad made me. He said if I didn't pin it on you, Ronan would come after me. I was scared, Evan. I didn't want to do it, but he threatened me. He threatened Mom. I thought lying would keep everyone safe. Evan stared at him, shock turning slowly into anger. You let them throw me out to cover up an insurance fraud? And you didn't say a word. Tyler wiped his face with his sleeve. I thought it would stop there. But Dad owed Ronan so much money, Evan. Thousands. And when the insurance claim didn't go through, Ronan snapped. I tried to fix it. I tried doing a delivery job for him. But the package wasn't what he said it was. It was illegal. I didn't know until it was too late. Evan's stomach twisted. Tyler, what did you get yourself into? Tyler's voice was barely a whisper. Ronan thinks the whole family owes him now. And when Dad told him you're working steady hours, Ronan decided you should be part of the payment plan. Evan felt the air leave his lungs. He put a target on me? After kicking me out? Tyler nodded helplessly. Ronan knows your name. He knows where you work. He knows everything. Evan backed away slowly, the truth hitting him like a punch to the chest. His expulsion wasn't a moment of rage. It wasn't favoritism or emotional cruelty. It was a setup, a calculated plan to feed him to the wolves. And now those wolves were coming. Evan stood outside the house he once called home, the porch light flickering the same way it used to when he was a kid. Everything looked smaller, worn down, almost desperate. He hadn't planned on coming back, but after hearing Tyler's confession, he needed answers. Needed to look the truth in the eye. He knocked once. The door flew open before his hand even dropped, and Marla stood there, her face red and swollen like she'd been crying for days. The moment she saw him, she broke. Evan! Oh God, Evan! She threw her arms around him, sobbing into his shoulder. He didn't hug her back. He didn't move at all. Mom, he said quietly, I'm not here for comfort. I just want the truth. She froze, her arms slipping away. She stepped back, wiping her face. Come inside, please. Just please. Evan walked in slowly, taking in the space where he'd spent most of his life feeling like a shadow's guest. Victor was sitting on the couch, hands clasped together like he'd been rehearsing a speech. When their eyes met, Victor put on a forced smile. Evan, Victor said, voice controlled and calm. I know things have been rough, but everything I did was to protect this family. Evan almost laughed. Protect? That's what you call throwing me out and telling a bookie I could pay off your gambling debt. Victor's jaw tightened. You don't understand the pressure I was under. No, Evan said, stepping closer. You don't get to flip this. Tyler told me everything. The insurance fraud. The staged blame. The plan to make me the fall guy. All of it. Marla covered her mouth, eyes wide. Victor, is that true? Did you really? Victor snapped, turning on her. Don't act surprised. You knew we needed money. You knew the company was digging. What was I supposed to do? Go to prison? You were supposed to protect your sons, Evan said coldly. Not sacrifice one to save yourself. Victor stood abruptly, pointing a finger at Evan like he was still a scared teenager. You think you're better than me? You think you understand how the world works. Sometimes you do what you have to do. Evan didn't flinch. No, that's what cowards say. Marla grabbed Evan's arm again, tears streaming. Honey, please, we're in danger. Ronan is threatening us. Tyler is terrified. I didn't know Victor would go this far. I didn't know he dragged you into it too. Evan looked at her, really looked. For the first time, he saw not the mother he wanted, but the woman she had chosen to be. Silent when he needed her, loyal to the wrong man, blind until the world forced her to see. I'm sorry you're scared, Evan said, pulling his arm away gently. But I'm done cleaning up messes I didn't make. I won't be your shield. Victor scoffed. So you're just abandoning your family? You abandoned me first, Evan said, walking toward the door. Don't call me again. I won't be dragged into this. He left before they could answer, closing the door on the people who had betrayed him long before tonight. And for the first time, he felt the weight lifting as he walked away. Evan arrived at the auto shop early the next morning, hoping to distract himself with work. But the moment he stepped into the lot, he froze. The side windows of the shop were smashed, shards of glass glittering across the concrete. One of the garage doors was dented inward, like someone had rammed it with a heavy tool. Hank was outside, pacing with a half-broken broom in one hand. Evan, he said sharply the moment he saw him. Get inside. Now. Before Evan could ask anything, two men emerged from behind a parked truck. They were big, thick jackets, shaved heads, heavy boots. The kind of men who didn't come to talk. You Evan Raleigh? One of them asked, stepping forward with a smirk. Evan's chest tightened. Who's asking? Ronan Hale sends his regards, the man said, tapping a metal pipe against his palm. Your daddy owes him quite a bit. And word is, you've got the cash he's too scared to hand over. Evan felt like the ground shifted beneath him. Victor had told Ronan he had money? Money Evan didn't even have? His stomach turned at the realization. His stepfather hadn't just betrayed him. He had offered him up like bait. Hank stepped between them before Evan could respond. Back off, he growled. This is my property. You want to threaten someone, do it somewhere else. The second man laughed. Relax, old man. We're just sending a message. He swung the pipe into one of the shop's side mirrors, shattering it instantly. The crash echoed through the lot. Hank flinched but held his ground. The first man leaned close to Evan. You've got 1 week. Pay the debt, or next time we break more than windows. They walked off casually, like they hadn't just turned his world inside out. Evan stood frozen, fury and dread swirling in his chest. Hank turned to him. You're coming home with me tonight. No arguments. I can't hide, Evan said, shaking his head. That's exactly what Victor did. I'm not going to make the same mistakes. Evan, they're dangerous, Hank insisted. This isn't a bar fight. These men ruin lives. I know, Evan replied quietly. That's why I need to do something. All day the shop felt different, quieter, heavier. Hank watched every car that pulled into the lot, and Evan worked with one eye on the door. By evening, Evan found himself alone in the small office, staring at Victor's number on his phone. He didn't call. He already knew what he'd hear: lies, excuses, manipulation. Instead, he opened a folder on Hank's old computer where he'd started keeping notes. The insurance fraud Tyler admitted to, the staged accident plans, every detail Tyler had spilled. Then he added a new section: everything he knew about Ronan's threats and Victor's connection to him. If Victor wanted to use him as a shield, Evan was going to turn the spotlight back on him. This time, he wouldn't wait for someone else to save him. He would save himself. Evan sat alone in Hank's office that night, the hum of the broken neon sign outside flickering through the window as he stared at the folder of documents on the desk. Victor had always treated him like disposable scrap, something to be kicked aside when convenient. Now Evan finally had the proof that showed who the real danger was. He uploaded the scans one by one, attaching them to a quiet message addressed to Lydia Corbin, the only attorney in town known for taking down men like Victor. No explanations, no dramatic message, just the files and a single line. This is everything. When he hit send, something shifted inside him. For the first time since he was 18 and thrown out like trash, Evan felt the ground solid beneath his feet. The next morning, he and Hank stood shoulder to shoulder repairing the busted garage door Ronan's men had kicked in. Hank worked quietly, but every now and then he'd glance at Evan with this proud, fatherly look that Evan pretended not to notice. Customers stopped by offering support, leaving coffee, even helping pick up metal scraps scattered across the lot. Evan didn't realize people cared this much. Not about him, not ever. But Ronan's shadow hadn't disappeared. 2 trucks parked across the street, engines rumbling like a warning. Evan didn't flinch. He stood in full view, wiping grease from his hands, daring them to come closer. They didn't. Not that day. That afternoon, while Hank was out picking up parts, Tyler slipped through the side entrance of the shop. He looked different, less arrogant, more hollow, like guilt had carved lines into his face overnight. Evan braced himself for another excuse, another plea, but Tyler held up both hands. "I'm done," he said, voice shaking. "With Dad. With Ronan. With all of it." Evan crossed his arms, keeping distance. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you're the only one who can stop him," Tyler whispered. "And I can help. I'll testify. I'll tell Lydia everything. I should have done it years ago." For a moment, Evan just stared at him, unable to decide whether to feel anger, sorrow, or relief. Tyler was the reason he'd been kicked out. The reason he'd slept in his car the first 2 nights after being thrown away. But he was also the only one in that house who had ever tried to protect him, even when he did it badly. "Fine," Evan said finally. "But once this starts, there's no going back." Tyler nodded like a man accepting his own sentence. When he left, Evan locked the door, leaned against it, and let the weight of the moment settle. He wasn't powerless anymore. Victor's lies were unraveling, Ronan's threats were becoming reckless, and for the first time, Evan wasn't reacting. He was planning. By the time Hank returned, Evan already had a list written on a grease-stained notepad. Names, dates, accounts, everything Victor had ever done. This time, Evan wasn't running. He was hunting. The flashing red and blue lights washed over the Brandt house long before dawn, painting the pale siding in frantic color as officers swarmed the property. Neighbors peered through curtains, whispering, but no one was more stunned than Victor himself. He stumbled out onto the porch in a robe, shouting about his rights, his reputation, his innocent family being harassed. But the officers ignored every word. They had search warrants. They had documents. They had signatures. And most importantly, they had Tyler's sworn statement. Evan watched from a distance, leaning against Hank's truck at the end of the street. He didn't hide, but he didn't step forward either. This wasn't a victory he needed to gloat about. It was simply the consequence Victor had spent years begging for. As officers hauled boxes of files and electronics out of the house, Victor's voice cracked. "This is a mistake. Someone set me up." His eyes scanned the road wildly. When he spotted Evan, his entire face twisted into something between hatred and desperation. "You did this," he roared. "After everything I did for you." Evan didn't respond. He didn't nod. He didn't smirk. He simply watched as the man who once called himself a provider was led away in handcuffs, still screaming into the cold morning air. Inside the house, Marla crumpled on the living room floor, sobbing into her hands. She kept repeating Evan's name, begging an officer to please bring him inside. Please let her talk to her son. She needed him. When Evan finally stepped through the doorway, her head snapped up. She reached for him instantly, as if he were a life raft. "Evan, baby, I didn't know your father," he lied. He said, "Please, please talk to me." Her mascara streaked down her cheeks, her voice raw. For a moment, Evan saw a flicker of the mother he once wished she had been. But wishes were for children, and he wasn't a child anymore. "I'm not here to comfort you," Evan said quietly. "But you're safe now. That's all I can offer." Her breath hitched, like the words hurt more than a slap. She reached for him again, but he stepped back, shaking his head. Her hands dropped. 2 officers escorted Tyler from the back hallway a moment later. He looked pale but relieved, like someone who had finally escaped a cage he helped build. When he saw Evan, he managed a shaky smile, an apology, a thank you, and a goodbye all at once. They're taking me into protective custody, Tyler said softly. I'll testify. All of it. Evan nodded. Good. It's time. As Tyler was let out, Marla cried harder, calling both their names, but neither looked back. Later that afternoon, Ronan's empire cracked open. Federal agents raided warehouses, seized shipments, and hauled men away in unmarked vans. Ronan himself was arrested in a sting Evan triggered with an anonymous tip. Not one thread led back to him. By nightfall, the Brandt family was scattered. Victor in custody, Tyler protected, Marla alone in an empty, echoing house. Evan walked away from it all without looking over his shoulder. Because this time, the collapse wasn't his. It was theirs. Weeks passed, and the cold Missouri winter settled in deep. Evan had finally found a rhythm. Early mornings at the shop, quiet dinners with Hank, late-night conversations with Callie that made him feel seen in a way he hadn't felt in years. For the first time in his life, peace didn't feel like something he had to earn. It was just there, steady and warm, like a place he could finally call home. One evening, as he climbed the narrow stairs to the small apartment above the shop, he found two figures huddled outside his door. At first, he thought they were strangers. Then Marla lifted her head. Her cheeks were sunken, her clothes wrinkled, her hands trembling around a plastic grocery bag that looked like it held everything she owned. Victor stood behind her, arms crossed, but he looked nothing like the loud, dominating man Evan once knew. His face was swollen from stress, his eyes hollow, and there was a defeated slump in his shoulders that told a whole story. Marla stepped forward first, voice cracking. Evan, honey, we don't have anywhere else to go. Evan's stomach tightened. He didn't speak. He didn't move. Victor cleared his throat, trying to muster authority, but it came out weak. We just need a place to stay for a couple of days. It's your duty, after everything we did for you. Evan let out a small, humorless breath. Everything you did for me? Victor scowled. We're your family. Family? Evan repeated. You only remember that word when you need something. Marla burst into tears. Please, Evan. I made mistakes. I should have listened to you. I should have protected you. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. You're the only one who'll even look at us now. Evan stared at her, really stared. For the first time, he didn't see the mother he had always hoped she would be. He saw a woman who had chosen comfort over courage, excuses over action, and a man who had dragged her into the ruin he created. I'm not helping him, Evan said, nodding at Victor. He made his choices. Victor's face twisted. You ungrateful. Stop, Evan said sharply, surprising all three of them. You don't get to talk to me like that ever again. Victor shut his mouth, the old power gone. Marla stepped closer. But me. Evan, I don't want him anymore. I want to start over. I want a life that isn't full of lies and fear. I don't know how to do that without your help. Evan swallowed hard. I can give you food. I can help you find a shelter. But you can't stay here. Tears streamed down her face, but she nodded slowly, understanding that this was the only mercy he had left to give. Hank appeared at the bottom of the stairs, arms folded. Callie stepped beside Evan, silently offering support. Evan felt their presence like a shield. He wasn't alone anymore. Marla took a shaky breath. Thank you for not turning away completely. Evan opened the door just enough to hand her a warm blanket he kept inside. She clutched it to her chest like it was the first kindness she'd felt in years. As Marla and Victor walked away into the cold night, separate, defeated, broken, Evan closed the door behind him. For the first time in his life, he wasn't shutting himself out. He was finally shutting them out, and choosing himself instead. Do you think Evan made the right choice by cutting ties with his family, or should he have tried to fix things despite their betrayal? Share your thoughts in the comments. I really want to hear your perspective. And if stories like this grip you, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new one.